Hello guys, welcome to another GIS tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create this kind of a map using the GIS data that you might have and how to do custom configurations in order to fit your map depending on your objectives. We will be using ArcGIS to create this map, so let's go ahead and get started with the map. So as you might see over here, I have already prepared the 3 files that I'm actually going to use in order to create this map. First of all, I have a DEM as you can see over here. Also, I have got the river network, which was in fact derived using the DEM, and also I have the particular watershed, the particular boundary of the watershed. Now in the finalized map that I showed you guys, you see that the DEM was actually clipped based on the boundary of the provided DEM. So first, before doing anything else, I'm just going to go ahead and first perform a clip operation just to clip my DEM based on the given boundary of my watershed. So for that, we can just go to the search tool and we can type clip. Since we are going to clip a raster, we have to go actually to the data management clip tool over here. So from here, we get the option to just simply drag and drop our DEM, and the extent will be defined by the watershed boundary shapefile. And also I'm going to tick use input features for clipping geometry, even though it's optional. Alright, now once the clipping is done, I can actually go ahead and get rid of this main DEM raster. And if I untick the watershed boundary, you will see that now it has been clipped based on the given watershed boundary. Now what I can do is I can actually activate this watershed boundary, and instead of having a certain fill color for this watershed boundary, I'm just going to select no color as the fill color, and I'm going to select dark black as the outline color. And let me also go ahead and maybe increase the thickness of the line to 1. Now what that does is actually you can see that it creates just the boundary of the watershed, but it just takes out the fill color. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to actually assign a certain color distribution for my DEM. Now, one of the easiest way you can do this would be just to go over here, click on this color ramp, and from here you can actually select a particular color ramp depending on your interests. As you can see over here, we have a wide variety of color ramps to choose from. Something like this also looks fine, but let me go ahead and maybe select this one. Now, ideally, I would like to actually have the river network in blue color, but you see that in the color ramp which I chose, there are certain areas which are actually represented in blue color, especially since this raster being a DEM, which is a digital elevation model. You see that these areas which are highlighted in blue color actually corresponds to high elevation areas. If you look at the legend over here, it shows that the highest elevation is 2091 meters above the mean sea level, so that probably corresponds to some areas over here. As you can see, it's quite dark in terms of the intensity of blue. So instead of choosing blue for the river, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select maybe black color for the time being. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it like this for the moment. And next, what I can do is I can also add a base map. So in ArcGIS, it's quite easy to add a base map. You can go to File and Add Data and add a base map like this. And from here, I can actually select OpenStreetMap or any other type of map of your choice. But for this map, I'm actually going to go with the OpenStreetMap. So what I can do is I can just select OpenStreetMap and then add it to my interface over here. And if all your other files are properly georeferenced, especially your raster and all your polygons and polylines, if they are properly georeferenced, then when I add the base map, it'll actually get placed correctly in the correct position where it's supposed to be. Now, for this example, I have selected the location. Now, for this example, I have selected a watershed in Malaysia, and as you can see over here, it's actually getting placed in the correct geographical location. Alright, so when preparing map using ArcGIS, one thing to keep in mind is that right now you are in the data view. If you just hover your mouse over this small button that you can see over here, it'll show you that you are currently in the data view. And there's a button right next to it called the layout view. Now, if you want to switch to this layout view, what you can do is you can just simply go ahead and click over here, and that'll actually show you the actual map layout. When you print this map out, this is how the map will get printed out. And as you can see, there are so many things that we actually have to do before we print the map out. Now, one of the things that I would prefer to do is actually I would like to flip the orientation of the page from being portrait to landscape. Now that you can do simply by going to this change layout button over here, and from here you can select either A3 or A4. I'm just going to go with the, actually there are other choices as well, but I'm just going to go with A4 landscape. And if I click finish, you can see now that the page got flipped to landscape mode. And just keep in mind that the outer border that you see is actually the border of the page, but this inner border is actually the area where your map is being displayed. Now, if you would like to fit the whole map into the page, into the full extent of the page, what you can do is you can simply drag this to fit it like this, and from here as well. But now you can see that we actually have quite a lot of space around here, that we can even zoom the map out to focus more on our watershed, right? Now there are actually two ways of doing this. You can either flip back to the data view, and if you take the magnifying glass and if you zoom into the extents of the watershed like this, and when you go back to the layout view, you will see that the layout has also been zoomed in properly just to fit according to the bounds of the A4 page, as you can see over here. But you don't have to do this necessarily. Instead, you can also just stay in the layout view, and you can again take the magnifying glass, and then you can actually play around with the zoom, with the level of zooming that you would like to have, like this. Yeah, I think now this is quite zoomed in just to fit appropriately into the A4 page. And then what you can do is you can actually take this pan tool and you can pan it around like this, in case if you would like to move it to left or right or up or down. When we are creating a standard map, there are actually few components which are quite necessary to have. Now, one of those things is actually the north arrow. Now, first I'm going to go ahead and add a north arrow to our map. The way to do that would be you can just go to insert and add a north arrow. And from here, in this north arrow select dialog box, there are actually a wide array of north arrows that you can select from. I'm just going to go with this S3 North 7 style of north arrow. Yeah, usually we can place the north arrow on the upper right corner of the map. Well, you can place it in another place as well, but it's customary to actually place the north arrow in the upper right corner. Just like this. You can even increase or decrease the size like this. Once you're done, you can simply just go ahead outside of your layout, outside of your page, and then just click just to deselect whatever you have selected. And if you would like to make further adjustments to the horizontal location of your watershed, you can even move it like this, leaving some space for a title or something like that. All right. And the second element that I'm going to add to our map is the scale bar. Now we can go to insert and then we can select the scale bar over here. And from the select scale bar dialog box, you can see that again, we have a wide range of scale bars to choose from. Now I'm just going to go ahead and select a scale bar that looks maybe something like this, which I personally have seen in most of the maps. So that's one of the types of scale bars that I actually personally feel comfortable to use. So usually the scale bar goes somewhere in the bottom of the map. Now since this is a scale bar, as you can see over here, when I drag the scale bar to actually extend its length, you will see that the numbers change. And if I shrink the scale bar, you can see that the distance or the length which is being shown by this particular length of the scale bar is now actually different. This particular feature actually can come in handy. For example, let's say if you decide to leave your scale bar at a length like this, or maybe I'll just try to extend it a bit more. Yeah. Now you can see that the distance from this point to this point is 28 kilometers. So just by knowing that, you can actually sort of transform that particular scale that you might acquire to your mind into some other place in the map as well. For example, you can see that if I want to get a quick visualization, maybe if I want to get a quick idea about the distance from this corner of the watershed to this corner, what I can see is I can actually just in my mind check how many scale bars would it take for me to actually cover this length starting from here up to here. Now roughly I would say about 2.5. So if I actually were to do it, yeah, maybe I was wrong. It's approximately going to be about 2. So it should be less than 56 kilometers. So I would say just about 51 or 52 or something like that. So once the map is printed out, you can do those kind of rough estimates just by having a scale bar. So you can actually extend or shrink the scale bar depending on your preference. Maybe I can extend it a bit so that I have the length starting from 0 up to 30 kilometers. And I can even double click on the scale bar and do some specialized effects as well, such as making the font bold or increasing the font size. Maybe I'll set the font size to be 11. Feel it's a bit too large, so maybe, yeah, about 10 should be fine. Yeah, so that's how you set the scale bar. In case if you would like to actually have a different background for the scale bar as well, even that's possible. Yeah, you can just go to frame and go to background. And in this case, I think that a background something like white would be sufficient. Yeah, something like this. And next, one of the most important things is actually the legend of the map. Now, as I explained to you guys before, this is a digital elevation map. That means the legend definitely should have the elevation distribution which corresponds to different colors, which shows different elevations. So that's one of the main things that should be there in the legend. And apart from that, you can also actually have things like the boundary of the watershed or the river network, something like that. Well, to do all of that, you first have to add the legend, which you can do simply by going to insert and select legend over here. And this window, the legend wizard, the first window in the legend wizard actually shows you which shape files or which rasters or which polygons that you would actually like to display in your map. So as you can see over here, in case if you do not want to display any of these items, what you can do is you can simply select over here and then put it back like this. And you can remove it like this. And in case if you have removed everything, you can actually put the element which you need back into this place by simply clicking over here and clicking on this arrow button. And this option actually allows you to categorize your legend into different columns. Now for this tutorial, I'm just going to actually stick with just one column, and we'll just go ahead and click on next. You can actually have this display as a title, or if you don't want to have that, you can actually even get rid of that once you create the legend. I'm just going to first go ahead and accept all the default settings in this case. Similar to what I did over here when I was creating the scale bar, I can actually select a background, maybe a white background, and I can also, add some extra effect by creating a drop shadow like this. And now I'm just going to go ahead and click next. And over here, I'm just going to accept the default settings. And over here, you can actually set the spacings. Now, again, until I create the legend, I'm just going to actually accept the defaults. But later on, if you need, you can actually make changes depending on your preferences. And this is the final option. So once I'm okay with all the values, I can just go ahead and click finish to create the legend. All right. Now you can see that the legend got created, but there are actually a couple of things that we need to alter in order to display the legend a bit more presentable. Now the first thing is actually the name of the legend. I mean the element that's actually being represented by this legend. Now as you can see over here, I have the layer name as dem_clip1, which happens to be the same name which has actually displayed over here. Now if you need to change this, one of the easiest way to do that would be simply click once over here and it'll like toggle into a renaming mode, and that'll give you the option to sort of rename the thing. Now I'm just going to rename it as elevation, and within brackets I'm just going to specify meters, or you can put meters above mean sea level if you're also dealing with a standard DEM. And once you're done with that, you can see that when you just click somewhere else, this already gets changed, which is quite handy actually. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm also actually going to change the setting of the drop shadow. Now if you would like to change certain things in this legend, what you can do is you can double click on this, and first I'm just going to go ahead and click on this frame, and over here you can see that it's exactly the same settings that we actually had before. So I'm just going to select maybe the offset to be about, let's say 2, X offset and Y offset. That'll sort of push back the drop shadow in too much. Maybe I'm just going to put this one as 4 and 4. Let's see how that looks. Now, as you can see over here, it's an exercise of trial and error. If something doesn't look nice, you can always just go back and change it and tweak it according to your preferences. Alright, I think this drop shadow looks fine to me. And now I'm just going to actually change the appearance of the legend values. Now you can see that it's sort of a color ramp which only shows the low and the high elevation values, but the values in the middle are left for us to sort of interpret, which might be a bit difficult. And if you find it difficult, especially if you're working with DEMs, if you're actually using another type of a layer, then I think this might not be relevant. But again, if you're working with DEMs or other type of rasters where classification can actually sort of help to pop up the different colors and give a meaningful touch to the appearance of the map, what you can do is you can just simply click over here and go to properties and go to symbology, and currently it's actually under the option stretched. Now, since I want to display different values or different classes, I'm just going to select on this classified option, and I'm going to break this into a number of classes. So the number of classes that you can break this into can be selected from here. Let's say I'm just going to go and select a higher number of classes. Let's say about 20. I think 20 should be fine. And you can click on this classify, and you can select actually how these classes have been assigned. Now you can always tweak this and create your own groups, own sort of classification ranges. But if you don't want to do that, you can actually also go to this method over here and select the classification method. Now for this, I would like to have equal intervals between each range. So I'm just going to go ahead and select equal interval over here, which sort of split the ranges into equal intervals. So as you can see over here, the first range has been assigned for elevations ranging from 66 up to 167.25, and the second is actually twice of 167.25, which is 266.5, and so on. So it has been actually categorized into a number of equal intervals. Also, you can select the color ramp over here. Now I'm just going to go back and select the same color ramp which I had before, and I'm going to select apply, and you can see that now the legend will also change. Yeah, like this. And in case if you would like to flip the color ramp, what you can do is you can actually simply click over here on this symbol, sort of the thing that looks like the heading of the column, and from here you can indeed flip the colors as well. And when you click apply, you can see that the colors got flipped. But I think in my case I would like to flip it back to what it was before. One other thing that you notice is actually if you look at this real legend over here, let me go ahead and move this a bit. You can see that there are so many decimal points, which in certain cases might provide some helpful insight. But since we are talking about elevations which are ranging from 66 up to 2091 meters, certain decimals might not really be relevant in this case. So I'm just going to go with whole numbers or integers, and I'm going to get rid of all the decimal points, which we can do by simply selecting on this label column heading. And you can go to format labels, and on number of decimal points, you can actually select the decimal points to be 0 and click OK, click apply. We are left with a bunch of whole numbers, which looks much more clear in terms of the definition or the categorization of the elevation classes. All right, so just going to go ahead and click OK. Now we can even move the legend back into here. Well, you can always do the tweaks depending on your needs. And well, now I feel like I don't really need to have this legend because I only have one class over here. And to me, it looks a bit distracting. So I'm going to double click over here and go to general and select and deselect this one, so that when I click apply, this legend thing will actually just disappear. I would also like to bold these letters, these numbers. So I can go to items, and from here you can actually select to which particular location that you would like to apply these effects to. So I'm just going to select apply to all labels and then select bold and click on apply. Now everything turned to be bold. All right, now click OK. And you can see that there's another option called value over here. Now, if you have something meaningful to add over here, what you can do is you can simply click once and toggle the renaming mode and write something. For example, some description about the units or something like that. But in my case, I actually don't have anything meaningful to write over there. So I'm just going to delete that and click somewhere outside. And as you can see, the distance between the heading and the legend components actually got removed. So now this looks quite alright to me. And you can equally resize the legend if you would like to increase the size a bit to fit it into the extents of your map. Yeah, I think it looks quite alright now. And after you do all this, you can even again take the pan tool and then, pan it around just to make it, just to fit your content appropriately, now that you have added a couple of more components to your map. Alright, before we finalize the map, I feel like one important thing from our map is missing, which is the latitude and longitude indications. Now, you can actually add those through adding a grid, or you can only opt to add those information on at the borders of the map without having to add a grid. So let's go ahead and find out how to do this. So what you can do is you can click on your map, go to properties, right click properties, and from here just come to grids and create a new grid. Now there are certain types of grids actually that you can add. You can add a graticule which divides the map by medians and parallels, or you can even add a measured grid or a reference grid. I'm just going to go with the first option, the graticule. And from here you can specify the distance at which you would like to place your parallels and meridians. Now I'm just going to specify an interval of 10 minutes. So at each 10 minutes, there will be parallels and meridians added into the map. And these settings, I'm just going to leave it like this and click finish. And then you can click apply. All right, now you can see that we sort of added a grid. And if I click OK over here, and if I zoom it a bit more, you can actually start seeing the degrees, minutes, seconds, longitude and latitude values in both horizontal and vertical directions. Now for this map, I would actually still like to retain these labels of the longitude and latitude values, but I'm going to flip this. For example, in the vertical side of the map, I would actually like to flip this, but on the horizontal sides, which means at top and bottom, I think this looks fine. But on the left and the right sides, I would like to actually flip this to have it written in a vertical manner. And at the same time, I'm also going to get rid of these grids because I think that it's a bit distracting to our map from what I feel. But in case if you prefer to have it, you can actually still have it. Alright, so to do those kind of edits, you can once again click on your map and go to properties. And now since you have added already a graticule, you can just double click on this, and all the edits that you would make now will be applicable to this particular graticule which you added. From here, the label orientation, I would like to have the vertical labels on left and right sides. So I'm just going to only tick those two options and click OK and click apply. And you can see that it actually flipped to the vertical direction. Alright, and again, let's go ahead and double click this because we are not completely done with all the edits that we need to do. I'm also going to increase the font size to be about 8. Let's see how it looks if I bold the letters. Yeah, I think we're better off without bolding the letters, but still retain that font size. Double click on this again, and now we will deal with the inner grids. We can go to these lines and we can say do not show lines or ticks. And if you do that, you will see that the lines inside the map will actually sort of disappear. I think now this is good enough, but we still have one thing to fix, because you can see that all these longitude and latitude values are outside the border of our map. Now if I export this map as a PDF or maybe as a JPEG or something, you will notice if you do that, that these things which are outside the border of the map will not actually get printed. So this map will look exactly like how it would be without these longitude and latitude values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink the map back into our border in a way that it'll allow some space for the longitude and latitude values to sort of, display. Yeah, I guess this is good enough. Maybe I can tweak this a bit to create a bit more space over here from the top. I think this looks fine, but when I did that, you can see that some parts of my watershed actually get cut from top and bottom. So I have to go back to the zoom out button and then maybe zoom this one out a bit first, and then zoom it back in a way that it actually covers the full extent of the watershed. Yeah, like this. I can pan it to the left a bit, and also adjust the locations of the north arrow as well as the scale bar. Alright, now I guess we are almost done. Since we are using a base map over here, if you would like to sort of drive the attention of the viewers to the map but not to the background too much, what you can do is, a cool trick would be actually to increase the transparency of your base map. Now you can do that simply by going to base map option over here, go to properties, and you can increase the transparency. Maybe I'll set the transparency to be about 15%. Yeah, now you can see that the attention of the viewer is directed more towards the contents of the map rather than to the background. Before we wrap this tutorial up, I'm just going to also show you a cool trick in order to make your DEM more visually pleasing. Now this might work with actually a DEM but not particularly with other types of layers. So if you're also trying to create a map of a DEM, one cool trick that you can do is actually you can first create a hillshade. Now let me go ahead and show you how to do that. What I can do is I can just simply type hillshade over here and go to 3D Analyst, and I can input this raster, and I'm going to specify the Z factor to be actually 1, and we can click OK. Now this will create a hillshade for us. So this is how the hillshade looks. Now again, as you can see that now the hillshade actually has been added to our map, which sort of distorts our legend over here as well. So I actually don't want to add this hillshade to my map. So what I can do is I can go to this legend properties by double clicking on it. And I'm going to go to general and click on this hillshade and put it back to the left side because we don't need it in the proper legend. Alright, now you can see that the hillshade is actually on top of the real DEM. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this and then put it under this DEM, and right now it doesn't look any different from what it was before. And what I can do is I can actually go ahead and select properties over here of my real DEM, and I can go to display and see what happens when I increase the transparency, let's say by about 10%. You can see that through the DEM we actually start seeing the hillshade. Since the hillshade has sort of a 3D property, it actually sort of reflects through this DEM when we increase the transparency like this. Let's say if I put about 15%. Yeah, just make sure that you actually don't overdo this one, because if we put, let's say, about 40%, actually that'll sort of wash out all the colors, which we do not need. But maybe I think we can push it as far as about 20%. Yeah, I think that should be fine. Or maybe just leave it about 15%, because I don't want to lose the real colors as well. And finally, when everything is done, or even before you wrap up everything, you can even just go ahead and add a title just to make your map, a bit more complete. So in order to add a title, you can just go to insert and go to title over here. And from here, you can actually give the title which you would like to have. For example, I'm going to name this as elevation map of the watershed, something like that. And you can actually freely move this one as well in order to place it in the correct place, and double click on it in case if you would like to actually change some properties of the map, properties of the characters. For example, I'm just going to maybe bold the letters and increase the font size as well a bit more, maybe about 28, let's say. Yeah, I think it looks fine. Just going to place this one as well over here. And finally, when everything is done, you can actually export this map into a JPEG. Now the way to do that would be, you can go to File and you can go to Export Map, and from here select the place to which you would like to export your map, and you can actually play around with the resolution. Now if you would like to have a very high resolution map, you can increase the DPI, and when you increase it, you will see that your width and height pixels will also increase. Now for example, if I would like to have a map with about 400 DPI, you can see that these are the corresponding types of corresponding width and height in terms of pixels. And over here you can adjust the quality of your JPEG, and also you can select the color mode. Just going to select 24-bit true color, and I'm going to select the highest quality. And after that, you can just click, maybe give a name over here, watershed elevation.jpg, And you can see over here actually there are other types as well, but I'm just going to go ahead with the JPEG. And once you're done with that, you can just simply hit save, and it might take a couple of seconds to export the map. Yeah, once you see export complete over here, you can actually navigate back to the place where you exported the map to. Yeah, over here you can see that I have one JPEG called watershed elevation, and that's how it looks. You can even put it into the full screen mode if you would like. Yeah, it looks quite good. Alright, I guess we are done with whatever we wanted to do. Now, of course, all the options that we discussed today can be explored further in detail, but the objective of this tutorial was to actually give you an idea of how to create a proper map using the map layout of ArcGIS. Now you can always play around and see how the tools can actually be manipulated to prepare a specialized map that fits your needs. So if you do have any questions, don't forget to comment them down below, and if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, consider subscribing as well. And as you might know, we are running an Introduction to Python for Absolute Beginners course these days. So if you're keen on actually learning Python, directed towards using Python for geospatial analysis, I'm sure this course will benefit you guys greatly. So don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for our upcoming tutorials as well. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.